Well, I'm still waiting for the attorney to finish the paperwork before I can make a video about my next big project, but I figure why pass up a chance to make a video on a small project, since those never stop. Some of you might remember my trash-picked 86 4-Trax 350, but you might not recognize it. As you can probably reckon, a guy's been doing a lot of eBaying. Rather frustratingly, it starts, idles, pulls, and stops better than my Mint 87. Never buy two of the same thing. You'll never stop comparing the two. You can love your kids equally, but you'll never like them equally. That's $100. That's $200. Those are 150. So other than some involuntary weight reduction, I only found one fault with it since I pulled it, kicking and screaming from the scrap pile it was destined for. Something's up with that diff. I don't know why I thought the stooge who bestowed such abuse on this poor girl would bother putting fluid in the differential, but shame on me for not checking it first. It's been on some proper trail rides with low dirty fluid, and now take a listen. Something's up in that front diff, and I haven't seen any good tutorial videos on this. So here's one. If, like mine, your diff makes this sound, but only when letting off the throttle, it means you've got backlash between the gears or your limited slip clutches are toast. Maybe you even chipped a tooth. Either way, the fix is the same. Replacement. You don't have to take the front wheels off, but it helps. Pull off this front guard plate. 312 mils. Uno, dos, tres. Then the front skid plate. Again, 312 millimeters. Here. Here. And there. Remove the cotter pin securing the driver's side tie rod end to the steering joint. It's a pretty dainty pin, so if you work it enough, it may just disintegrate. I lost my good can of Tri-Flow, so we're slumming it today, boys. Use a 17mm wrench and crack it loose. See how that double D shaft spins? You'll need the holder still with a 14mm wrench. You should be able to pop it out by hand, but if you feel the need to use a hammer, make sure you start a nut on the end so you don't blow out your threads. The goal is to first separate the axle housing from the differential housing, which means first removing these three 14mm bolts. See them? They're through bolted with 17mm nuts on the other side. Next, this 12mm here to move this brace out of the way, and then a 10mm holding the brake line to the knuckle. Did you really think you'd do a job on a Japanese quad without some 10mm action? Next, remove this hateful little ring clamp, and slide the breather hose off the diff housing.
Can you help me, bud? I need you to squeeze the lever. Keep going. Go, go, go. Squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. All right.
Thanks.
No problem. If you need more help, I'll help.
All right. Appreciate it.
If you do need help, I'll help. If you do need more help, I won't help.
I'm confused.
You could unbolt the driver's side strut from the diff housing, but I don't recommend it. It's a shoulder bolt, and in my experience, the shoulder seizes inside the strut mount, and you either run it off with an impact until the rubber mount disintegrates, or you can cut it out. Either way, you're screwed. You may get lucky, but I never do. Here's my advice. Instead, disconnect it from up top. Just a 14mm bolt you can reach to the fan, and a 17mm nut on the other side. You can put a drain pan here before you separate the passenger side axle if you think you have fluid in your diff. I'm pretty sure I don't. See those 4 17mm nuts? Don't cry because your awesome power ratchet won't reach the 4th nut. Smile because it reached the other 3. Now we'll pull the driver's side knuckle off. Same deal, 4 17mm nuts. It comes right off the diff housing. Now off comes the drive shaft. It's not deja vu, just 4 more 17mm nuts, and the diff pops off. Lower it gently so you don't kink that brake line. Now you should be able to pull the driver's side knuckle off the differential. Again, lower it gently and pull on it. The strut makes a good handle. Come on, stupid drain pan. There you go. Now you could undo the fill plug and drain the fluid in a careful, clean manner. I'm just going to crack it open in my oil pan. Uh-oh. Idiotic thing, making me use the right tool. That weird bolt is threaded in one side, but it's just a pin going in the other side, so you don't even have to take it out to get the casing apart. If you can't He-Man this apart, give it a couple love taps with a rubber mallet. Bone dry. That's good. Most likely your used differential comes with the housing, but I would still crack it open in case just to check some things. Make sure both bearings feel good and smooth, not gritty. Check the grooves where the O-rings seat for nicks, gouges, or dirt. My O-rings elected to stay behind on the machine, so make sure you keep track of them. Also, don't lose these shims that fall out. You ain't gonna find these at Lowe's or, dare I say it, Ace Hardware. Take the opportunity to clean out the case, look for sludge, metal shavings, pretty much anything. Get it nice and clean. You want to be able to eat your ramen noodles out of it. Because if you're trying to maintain one of these old Hondas, that's what you can afford. Give it a nice blow. Clean the mating surfaces of all dirt, feces, old gasket material. Reinstall the shims, and if you're an especially dense individual, make note that they're different sizes. Reinsert the differential and make sure you don't get it cocked. Otherwise, it's fun to get back out again. You'll want to seal the case. Any RTV works for this, but I find that once you go black, you don't go back. Never fucking fail. Just a dab will do ya. Reinstall the other half of the case, and if you're not sure, align the strut bolt with that domed nub thing. Brace it in the vise carefully, and then in a star pattern, tighten the 12mm bolts to 20 foot-pounds and the 14mm bolts to 36 foot-pounds. Apply some molybdenum disulfate, molybdenum disulfide. Apply axle grease to the axles.
Yeah.
My preferred order of operations is to jack up the passenger side of the front end, then insert the differential. Give the axle a turn if you're having trouble getting the splines to key up. Once they do, get a nut on. Then finagle the whole thing under the input shaft. The more you curse, the better it fits. This is the easy part. Just shove the driver's side knuckle onto the differential. Come on. Did I say easy? Before Before you connect the knuckle, make sure the tie rod goes in front of the frame tube but behind the strut, or else you'll be pulling the knuckle back off. Every damn time I do this job. There we go. Tighten all 4, 8, and 12 nuts to 58 foot-pounds. Reinsert the tie rod end and torque to 58 foot-pounds. Click.
Welcome back.
Torque these 3 to 65 foot-pounds. Reinstall the brace and the brake line clamp. Slip the breather hose back on, but fuck you. I'm not dealing with that clamp again. Remember, kids, your hand is not a hammer. Just gonna jack up the axle so these strut mounts line up. Before the guards go back on, let's correct past mistakes and remove the 17mm cap to fill it. 12-pointed devilry. Here's the fluid I use. 80 weight 90 hypoid gear oil. Honda calls for GL4 oil, but look at that. Much like feeding an infant, you just keep shoveling it in there until eventually it starts coming back out. Snug it down. Oop, that was a fart. Now would be a good time to hose the mollusks off your skid plate. Bonjour. Wheels back on. And happy ripping.